Okay, so now we're live. So now, if you click on it, does it? What if you just copy that URL I sent you into a web browser? Actually, I'm going to try and invite you to this. Oh, you can? Cool. I just didn't. Oh, there might be a little bit of a lag. I just sent you another link to invite you to it. Yeah, yeah. Okay. That's what we gotta do. Steve's coming back from lunch here. So you guys have the week off? That's cool. Yeah, that's nice. How's your wife doing? Mara? She eating crazy stuff? She was like ribs. It's called I need Big Mac. Yeah, try that. You might have to clear your cache and log back in. Well, what are you guys working on at the studio? Oh, cool. Oh, cool. When did you leave Paramount? Did Neil like? I heard. I was there. I was in Encore for a couple weeks in January. Yeah, I guess Neil left. You start mixing in the box, or is you still? Oh, yeah. Cool.
Hey, all right. Drop the phone now. Hey.
Cool. So let me see here. There we go. Okay, cool. I think we're good.
Awesome.
And so is this El Dorado?
Yeah, this is El Dorado. So I figured it'd be more interesting than just being at my house in my little fucking bedroom studio with no gear. So yeah, this way we can, do some showing people around kind of stuff. I mean, no need to do it now, I guess. But yeah, we've got the whole control room. We've got a whole setup in the live room right now from when we were tracking. We were doing demo tracking stuff. Yeah.
That's cool. This is our little studio here. Like a. Oh, the camera. My bad. Here you go. So, we have got like an Avalon vocal booth.
Yep.
Yeah, soundproofing and stuff.
Cool.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. El Dorado's kind of overkill. Like we have a whole board that we barely use. It's like.
You guys have a K?
Yeah. We have a K, and it's great, but it's also a maintenance nightmare. And we pretty much started, I don't know, about a year plus ago, we started using the Shadow Hills Equinox summing box.
Oh, cool.
It just sounds way better.
Really?
Yeah.
So you guys have
the K sounds way better than the G we had before.
Wow.
The K sounds great.
You guys like just automate Pro Tools?
Yeah. And we'll do like Rich will do, because there's not enough. The summing box isn't quite big enough, so we'll do like some effects returns to the board, and then just send them on one of the boards like stereo buses, and then patch that into the Equinox. So there'll be a few faders in use, but just a few.
Do you just use it for like sessions, for like routing stuff? And
yeah, we use it when we're tracking all the time. Because that it's just way easier.
Headphone mixes and all that stuff.
Yeah. But yeah, we spent like the whole Death Cab record. We did we mixed the whole thing pretty much on both.
Oh wow.
And Rich is crazy. He mixes a lot of songs multiple times, but we pretty much mixed the whole record on both the console and the summing box, and went with the summing box. And every once in a while, he gets inspired to try the console again, and every time he's like, "Nope, go back to the Equinox."
What's your tubas?
It's crazy. We've got so right now here we've got this. So you can see over here. Let's see. Yeah, you can see the Equinox there, I think. And then next to it is the big brother, the Palindrome. That is a non-existent product made for us by Shadow Hills. It's basically the center section of a console that doesn't exist yet.
Wow.
And so that's basically replacing the center section of our SSL right now. and that has the main insert point on it for the mix chain. And then for the mix chain, we've got these. Where are we here? These. Sorry, it's a little hard to tell what you guys can see and what you can't. Are you seeing these silver compressors here? They look kind of like Pultec. Well, okay, there's a Pultec up here. Here. Let me figure this out so I can get a better sense of what you guys can see. Hold on. All right. So there's that Pultec, but there's these compressors, these silver guys. They're called the Magic Death Eyes. This mastering engineer over at Capitol has started making them. There's like John Mayer's engineer, who he's good friends with, has a pair, and we have a pair. I think he's making a pair for Michael Brower, and then hopefully he'll actually have enough money to get into production a little bit. Wow. But they're basically like faster Fairchilds. They're really nice.
Oh wow! All tube,
and they're killing it. Like Rich has been switching mix bus compressors like multiple times a song as long as I've worked with him, and these just stay on the mix bus now.
Wow.
They're just insane, and everything sounds huge and wide, and there's a big lots of room for the vocal, and they just sound great. And then the GML EQ below that, and the Millennium EQ below that, and that's our standard mix chain nowadays. Although we also have, let's see, this guy up here, this weird looking box, which is also made by the Magic Death Eye guy, and it's just a tube clipper. Basically, it's just like 8 tubes in a box. Basically, set the amount of gain, and it's really kind of impressive because obviously you can get it to just distort, but at lower settings, you can really bring out a lot of depth in a mix.
And you guys just kiss it, barely tap it, or do you hit it pretty hard?
No, I mean we hit it. Like you can see, the thing. It's usually down pretty low on settings. We're usually not trying to just because you can obviously just fully decimate with it, but if you use it subtly, it just adds a real thickness, and it's really cool.
Awesome. That's cool.
Yeah. So that's our. Well, here, let me, show you guys around a little more. So here's the K. And like I said, it's a really great board. The only problem with it is the switches, especially the large fader to mix and small fader to mix switches, go bad all the fucking time. So every couple months we have Bruce from Desk Doctors come in and do maintenance on it and just fix all. So you can kind of see maybe got little pieces of tape on all the switches that have gone bad. And Bruce is coming this weekend and fix those. But other than that, it's a really great sounding board. Sounds transparent like the J, but has a lot more character. And then over here we've got Rich's Neve sidecar, which we use both tracking and mixing. He'll use those as a lot of times we'll run gear out of Pro Tools before the Equinox, in between. And so we use these strips a lot. And then we get into some of the rest of the gear here. Some of it's Rich's, some of it is the studio's. Trying to think of any particularly cool pieces. We've got some Chandler gear, the usual suspects, Universal Audio and stuff like that. We do have multiple Fairchilds here. We have a 670 over here. You can kind of see covered by cables a little bit right now. And we've got a pair of 660s in the rack over here.
Are those are Eldorados, the ones that live there?
Yeah. All the actual Fairchilds belong to Eldorado. We've got this guy up here. This you see this RCA compressor? Yeah. It's the BA6A. It's a really nice sounding one. Apparently, it's got oil and paper capacitors or something. I don't know. There's a lot of voodoo stuff that I don't really know how much I buy into, but
That's cool.
Yeah, or it's like we got that just started being like a vocal compressor on every song.
Yeah, I think Butch and Billy had one of those. They each had one, and it went out, and they gave it to Tom, and Tom was basically like, "I can't get these paper caps." So there's some reason why they were unfixable.
Yeah,
It sounded amazing.
Yeah, it sounds great, and apparently, the capacitors are a total nightmare if something does go wrong. Luckily, we've had it, I guess, a year and a half, and it's been good so far. So, yeah.
How many guys does he have? Like you and
It's me and Martin who have the same job. Rich works like 13, 14 hours a day, so he used to just burn out his engineers. And so this time, when he hired us a couple of years ago, he decided to get two and do shifts. So we basically do day shift and night shift, and we switch off every 2 weeks. So like day shift is like 9 to somewhere between 5 and 7. Night shift starts at 5 and goes till we're done, whether that be like 11:30 or 4 in the morning. And then every 2 weeks we switch off. And then we've got our Mario, who is our assistant engineer, and he does all the mix prep. So like when the sessions come in, they go to him, and like that's like his number one job is doing the mix prep stuff. And he's also like our runner and stuff like that. But we also now have an intern that when he's only here certain hours of the day, but when he's here, obviously he does the runs and studio cleaning and stuff like that. And Rich, and that's the whole staff.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I think you guys did a lot. That's the main control room?
Yeah, so we've got this cloud ceiling of hanging clouds. And then, let's see here.
Oh, and you built up the back.
So, yeah, this is the back you're seeing now. And I'll just try to swivel around and you can get a sense.
The kids are actually at lunch right now.
Oh, okay.
3 of them are still. They're supposed to be back at 1, so we might just go over this again once they come back. Actually, let's see. We got Patrick and we got 3 of them here. So, and Gabe's my work study student who's I'm hiring for the week. We did another class that was kind of like pop R&B oriented.
Yeah.
And we met with JP. We did the same thing with JP.
Yeah.
So this would be cool if we could kind of do this because we have 4 of the kids that were in that class. In this class, maybe talk about like the difference of because you had a bunch of the whole Paramount scene and the whole like
art. Oh yeah.
So maybe the difference between the 2 worlds.
Okay.
Might be cool because we got 2 kids that make beats and are totally in the box, and then we got 4 kids that want to be indie rockers. Maybe not be indie rockers, but they dig your discography a little bit more than JP's and vice versa.
Right, totally. All right, cool.
And then maybe like work ethic stuff, or a lot of the kids we have 17 seniors in high school, or like they're ready to. So maybe either try to talk them out of the music business, or.
So did you get that downloaded?
I haven't checked it.
Okay.
But the internet for that computer's that's what we're using for the stream.
All right.
So I was thinking we could talk a bit about that, and then maybe just I don't know, like your lineage of how you got into the business, and
sure,
like coming up through Paramount and your breaks and stuff, and philosophies on stuff.
Yeah, totally.
And then I don't know if you came up with anything to talk about, or if you had anything that you were thinking about.
I was thinking that stuff generally, and then I can, if they want, I can get into like how we do things here because it's kind of a complicated setup, and it's Rich specific, but it's interesting, and it's something that you can get a sense of like how. I think you can sort of get a sense of just how ridiculous things can get from at this level.
I'd like to hear that. Like Like did you meet Claudius Mittendorfer? His oldest sister?
No.
Oh.
I've heard that. Wait, is that somebody who used to work here?
Well, he was Richard's assistant
Okay.
When Chris Testa and I were building the studio in Silver Lake,
Yeah.
he helped us out a lot with it, and I think that was like when because he came into Paramount. Rich came into Paramount for a little while.
Right.
I was out on a hernia surgery, but Claudius was there, so I just because Claudius, we went through a lot about what his setup was back when he was in New York. But I'd be interested to see like how it's evolved into.
Oh, I'm sure it's completely different. I mean, it's completely different than when I started working here. Like it's fairly different from how it was 3 months ago. I mean, it's just like Rich is never satisfied or like willing to just like, this is the way we do it, and that's the way it is. Like it's always, oh, let's try this, let's try, it's never changing. So
well, maybe like from a producer, like maybe like the producer hat or the engineer hat or the mixer hat, like how, if there's a difference between those or how he approaches bands.
Sure.
That's what a lot of what we've been talking about this week is like, like we got a couple kids. We got one kid that's from LA that is like into Jake Bugg and like kind of indie rock thing. We got two kids that are making, like one kid making dubstep and Fruity Loops. And then Patrick's a pretty significant beat maker. He's interning at a studio up here at London Bridge, which is kind of a cool. So he's got to kind of see the other side. And then we have a pretty accomplished violinist, and then Luke over here just walked in. He's a composer. So maybe just kind of like philosophies about how you would, like how you produce bands and how you approach different projects and stuff like that. That might be cool.
Sure.
And then whatever you want to do. And we could go the whole afternoon if you want, if you got time.
Okay, well, let's just see how it goes. And obviously, I won't be insulted if at any point you're like, all right, let's we've done enough or whatever. Like, it's all good.
We also don't have air conditioning.
Keep it interesting.
And it's about 90 degrees.
Here. Okay.
So run out of oxygen pretty quick, and it starts to. So if we have to take a break or if the kids start fainting.
Yeah, all good.
I want to put this up here.
Do you want me to go get the others?
Oh yeah, are they back?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let me refill my glass of water real quick, and then we'll.
Okay. What's that? Where's it set? All right, so looks like we got everybody back.
All right.
This is Nick Fournier.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Nick.
So why don't we just go? Maybe we can go around the room and introduce themselves, and maybe just kind of give some, talk about your what you want to do, what you do, and where you want to. Hi, how's it going?
Hi, I'm so sorry.
Okay.
Two good questions. You aren't going to be in Poncho at all.
No.
Okay. And then the other one is, what do you want to do with that desk that is up by Poncho that we currently have covered with the Cornish?
Oh, you can live there if we can. Do they need to move?
I think Michael would like to move it at some point, and he would just like to move it at some point today while he is here, because he won't be here tomorrow, so that he can help you. I am a flute player and no otherwise.
What time is he leaving today? I'll pop up after we're done with this. We'll let you go. Okay, sorry. So why don't we just go around the room and then everybody like introduce themselves, maybe tell like where you're from and what your interests are and where you want to be in 10 years. But yeah, let's just go around and we'll everybody introduce yourselves.
Can I be seen?
Can you see over here? Let's see.
No, not quite. I just saw their hand. Okay, there we go.
Hi, I'm Luke. I'm from around here, and I eventually want to go into film composing. I do composition right now, so I'm taking this class to just learn more about production and making things sound good to utilize.
Cool.
Hi, I'm Ben. I'm in Seattle. I'm taking this class to learn how to I want to be able to self-produce, or just mix my own music if need be. That'd just be a valuable skill to have.
Yep.
In 10 years, I want to be playing music.
Cool.
I'm Patrick. I'm from Seattle also, and I do a lot of producing all kinds of different genres like pop or R&B or hip hop. And I'm taking this class to learn more about Pro Tools and feel more comfortable in it. And in 10 years, I want to be producing pop tracks and tracks of all kinds.
All right. Cool.
My name is Gabe. I live in Seattle. I am a composer and I play mostly metal and jazz. And I want to learn this stuff mostly so that I can do it myself. So I don't have to pay someone else to do it and deal with communication barriers and all that stuff.
James. I just took this class because I thought production was interesting. I just want to learn more about it. And right now it's just a hobby. I don't really know how far I want to take this production thing. I don't really know if I want to get into the music business. So I don't really know where I'm going to be in 10 years. I don't really have a solid plan.
Okay.
We don't have to do the 10-year thing.
Okay.
I'm Devin. I'm from Seattle, Washington. I compose mostly electronic music. I started out making trance music in FL. I now have Ableton, and I'm starting to go into more experimental genres. And where I want to be in 10 years is producing a lot of different genres.
Cool.
I'm Adrian. I'm obviously around here. I'm just a violinist, and I do mostly classical, but I'll do jazz improv and stuff. And from classical, I've gotten kind of bored with it, so I'm kind of looking to branch out from that, which is kind of why I took this class.
I'm Henry. I'm from Los Angeles, and I am here to learn about as much as I can about audio engineering because I'm interested in it, but I play guitar and other instruments, so it's helpful for me to know how to record myself. And also, in 10 years, I feel like I want to be playing music and writing music.
All right. Cool. Well, actually, like a lot of you guys, I actually started out, I got into this, I was in school, I went to University of California in Santa Cruz, and I was doing the electronic music program there, which is very composition-based. It's very, academic, composition program. Lots of, we did Max MSP, for example, lots of, sort of fairly esoteric ways of composing. We learned about analog synths, all kinds of stuff like that. And I was in a band. I was in bands all through high school. I used to play bass, and I was in a band in college. And basically, they had the facilities at the electronic music program to record yourself, to record a band or whatever. Not much, but they had a Mackie digital 8 bus board, ADATs, complement microphones. And so once I was through the main part of the program, you can sort of design your own project every quarter. And so the first one, I recorded my band and mixed it. And that was it. I just fell in love with doing that. And, I was sitting there mixing for 8 hours a day because I was terrible at it. And it was really hard and I couldn't get anything to sound good. But I realized I could sit there for 8 to 10 hours a day and do that, and time would just fly by, and it didn't feel like work, And so that was it. I got the bug. I started a record label with some friends while I was in college, started recording local bands, and then, after I graduated, moved down to LA and got a runner job in the studio. That was, once I realized. So, but it's just, I just wanted to point out that I started out basically wanting to just record my own band. That was the goal. It was a vehicle for that. But, sometimes the production itself, leads you away from your own music, and you just want to do that. So yeah, that was really how I got my start. Would now be a good time to get into my sort of career path. And
Yeah. I mean, so you moved from Santa Cruz to LA, and then you started working at Paramount, right?
yeah, I got a runner job at Paramount in about 3 weeks after I moved to LA.
And that was 2000.
It was 2003.
2003. Okay.
And it was like, literally just, sending resumes to all the studios in town every couple weeks, just and looking, it was, and I lucked out. And they, even though I hadn't been to like traditional recording school and stuff, they liked that I had done the record label thing and had made some records and whatnot. And they, gave me a runner job. And so it was 6 months of working like 60-hour weeks, that, mostly getting people's food and cleaning up the studio, and occasionally getting to like help an assistant set up microphones or something for a session. But I did that well, got promoted to what was at that point, there was sort of like the front desk job at the studio was like the head runner position. It's since at that studio become more of a management position. But so got moved up to that, and then started doing sessions on nights and weekends, and did about 6 months of that, of like at the desk Monday through Friday during the day, and then doing sessions whenever I could fit them in. And then finally had a client, an engineer of a client, this guy Bob Horn. I did a few sessions with him, and it went really well. And he said, "I'm going to have, like a 3-week mix session coming up. Maybe you should, see if your bosses will let you do that and get off the desk." And so they agreed, and that was it. That was, from that point on, it was just, engineering and assisting, that was a big day. I was definitely really happy about that. It's a hard road just to get to there.
Yeah. and then that you basically, we met at Paramount.
Yeah.
So that's how we know each other, and we worked many long weeks together in the trenches. Yeah. But then you got on with Neil Avron.
Yeah, it was about 2 more years after that. And actually our friend George had been assisting. Actually, the first time Neil Avron came to the studio, I was still working the desk, and he just needed somebody to do the recall notes. So like it was like kind of a low budget session, so he didn't want a full-time assistant. So they had me do it. But then I think the next time he came in, I was on something else already. And so George got the gig, and then George was like Neil's guy for like a couple years. And that was like right when Neil was taking off. It was the first big Fall Out Boy record came out. They just did a bunch of like pretty big records right off the bat, and it was clearly a good gig to have. And then George left. Oh, George left to go to Glenwood Place.
Yeah.
And so
and then Neil tried a bunch of people. I was one of them. He didn't like.
Yeah.
Well, he had Rob and you and a couple people, but he liked you, and then you got the gig, and
and it stuck. And that was like 2007 till basically when I left in 2013. About 6 months out of the year, my work was just assisting Neil on mixes.
And that was like Linkin Park.
Yeah, we did the Linkin Park Minutes to Midnight and 1,000 Eyes. We did like 3 Disturbed records. We did Sarah Bareilles record that Neil produced. Actually, we had a really cool moment in like 2010 when we had 3 #1 records in a row on Billboard. Like it was like, I forget what order it was, but it was like Sarah Bareilles record one week, Linkin Park the next week, Disturbed the next week.
Well, it was like
right in a row.
There was some record you guys broke that it was the only mixture that it had 4 #1 hits consecutively with completely different genres, right?
Yeah, or something like that. It was a weird set of weeks, and it was totally just the coincidence of their release dates and everything. It's the kind of thing you can't plan for at all. But that was pretty cool.
Funny time. Basically, the radio out in the studio, the radio in the lobby would be playing what you.
It would just be stuff Neil mixed half the time. Yeah.
And so then you worked with Neil for quite a few years, but then and so maybe once we start looking through the studio and at the equipment and stuff, because a lot of these guys, I mean, Patrick's and Gabe have both worked in studios a lot, but a lot of these guys might never get to know the console, you know.
Okay, yeah.
And so Neil basically would need to come to Paramount to have a big console, but then kind of went into the box, like started basically.
Yeah. So there was Studio A at Paramount was a SSL 6000. It was like a 50 or 64 channel board, and basically, you know, Neil just really liked the way that board sounded from when he started using it. It's a good sounding room too. It translates really well. And Neil we'll get into where I currently work later, but Neil was very different from my current boss, where like Neil had like a setup that he liked, and we would make changes like very slowly. He'd like introduce a new piece of gear or try something routed differently or whatever, you know, once every couple records. But we'd pretty much stay with like a continuous setup at least through an album or two. And he was, I mean, Neil was amazing. He's still, you know, I don't know, I couldn't say whether he or Rich is a better mixer. Like, he's still an amazing mixer, and he also is a producer. I worked with him almost exclusively in a mixing capacity, so I don't know much about his production technique. But yeah, it was all SSL based. And then toward the end of when I worked at Paramount, Neil did some construction at his house and put in a home studio, and basically got the hang of mixing in the box. And once he got the hang of that, that was sort of it. It was like there was no reason to be paying, you know, $800 or $1,000 a day for a studio anymore, when, especially, you know, as budgets keep going down, and a lot of the stuff he was working on would be like, you know, more recent records by like Yellow Card or Newfound Glory, bands that had already had their heyday and were like getting deals on, you know, smaller record labels where it's like 20 grand or something for the whole record, and basically whatever the producer cannot spend on studio time, he gets to keep. You know, so that there's a lot of incentive in those situations to keep costs down as much as possible. So yeah, he started moving toward in the box, and as I worked with Neil, a lot of my job was not just keeping the recall notes and doing the patching and doing the printing of the mixes and stuff like that, but also prepping the Pro Tools sessions for him. So you know, they would come in from the clients, and usually a lot of times you get the sessions come in from the clients and they're a total mess. They're wherever the clients left them. There's like, you know, sends to effects that aren't there anymore. There's, you know, like things aren't named properly. There's bad edits. There's all kinds of stuff you have to do. So my job would be to go through those sessions, clean them all up, fix bad edits, organize everything, you know, lay it out in the order he wants it, set up the outputs for the console, you know, clear out, but I knew which plugins to clear out and which one type of stuff he wanted to keep, all that kind of stuff. So the session prep became a big part of my job with him. So even after he moved to working at home in the box, he would still like send me sessions, and I would just prep them at home on my home Pro Tools rig and then send them on to him. Yeah, that's pretty much how that all went.
One of the things with these guys is like a couple of the kids are more into pop music, I guess.
Yep.
I'm not going to say too much about this, but you know, at Paramount, there was every genre of music, and maybe what's the difference kind of in the pop world versus maybe more of your world?
Yeah.
Or the as far as the genres of music, or if that even really exists anymore, as far as going into two different, and what the difference in maybe the work ethic and the processes between.
It's really different. I mean, like in the rock world, you know, you still primarily, although there's not always the case, but primarily you still have bands that are writing their own songs and either doing the arrangements in pre-production and just coming to the studio and laying them down, or at least coming into the studio, you know, with the songs written and some idea of what they want to do arrangement-wise, and working with the producer in the studio to flesh the songs out, get the arrangements down, get everything recorded. In the pop world, you know, pop, hip-hop, R&B, and even into, you know, like the more into, not purely electronic stuff, obviously, but the stuff where it's electronic, you know, where it's dance music with vocals. Almost all of that is like the production and of the track and the vocals are like two completely separate processes. And so usually in the studio, as things, it used to be when I started out, 12 years ago, not everything was, people weren't doing all their production in the box. So a lot of times we'd get these big hip hop like producer sessions coming in where it was like racks of keyboards and an MPC, and we'd have to like MIDI everything up, to the MPC, and then patch all the outputs from the MPC and all the keyboards up into the SSL and have everything routed to go into the computer. And they'd sit there, for half a day and make a beat. And then when they were finally done, they'd be like, all right, let's put this in. And we'd, track it all into the computer. As, nowadays, people are mostly making their tracks in Ableton Live or Logic or Fruity Loops or, whatever. And so a lot of it is just done at people's home studios and whatnot. We don't do a lot of, I certainly haven't done a lot of like in studio, sessions for that kind of stuff. But then what happens is either way, regardless, somebody makes the beat, and then they hand out, they sell beats to people or work with, they're working with people and they give them prospective, tracks to work on. So for vocal sessions, it was almost always the client would come into the studio with either a CD or an MP3 in their email account or something, and you just take that 2-track and load it into Pro Tools and find the tempo and just track vocals over that. And then later, when it came mix time, it would be like the process of combining the multi-track instrumental session with the multi-track vocal session, which is sometimes a nightmare because a lot of times the producer keeps changing the multi-track instrumental session after he hands it out. So when you finally get it from him, it's like totally different from the 2-track you were given originally, and you have to like reshuffle everything around to match what you recorded vocals to.
The track, like fabricate the track in Pro Tools.
Yeah.
Or fabricate the vocal track in Pro Tools to work with whatever.
Right. Well, we just actually, the Sentigold record that we just mixed here, she was actually in, we have a B room. It's a much smaller control room off of our live room. And she was actually holed up in there with her engineer, Brendan, for a couple weeks while we were finishing up the tracks. And he was like, dealing with exactly that. She would have gotten a 2-track from a producer. She'd cut her vocals to it, and then when they asked for the multi-track, the arrangement would be completely different, or the structure of the song would be completely different, and he'd have to sit there for several hours, like matching their, conforming their multi-track arrangement to what they had it as when they sent her the 2-track. Yeah, it was a pain in the butt.
So and then how did you meet Rich and get from? I mean, because the Rich situation is a lot different than the Paramount gig, because it's very specific to what he's the producer, engineer, mixer.
Yeah, I mean it's essentially a private studio. The Paramount gig is we're gonna have all kinds of different clients. Everything that I've done jazz sessions, I've done gospel sessions. I've done country sessions, but not a lot of them. But all kinds of different instrumentation, all kinds of different clients, lots of just tracking vocals with 2 faders up on the board, and that's it. But every day it's a different client, or maybe every couple weeks or whatever. But constantly doing different stuff, and whereas this is very much a private studio, so it's just the projects Rich is working on, whether he's producing or mixing or what. It's all in-house, and it's all his setup, and we don't, people do, because it is it was a commercial studio, so we do still get phone calls for people asking to book studio time and stuff like that, and we have to tell them that, we don't book out the studio, that's a private studio. And so the advantage of that is, at a commercial studio, half the time you're just setting up and breaking down over and over again, because you've got a new client coming in the next day, and the studio's just got to be zeroed out. It's just got to be everything put away and nice and neat and like back to square one, ready for, a new project at the end of every day. And here nothing ever gets zeroed out. Like it's just a constant evolution of process. And actually I'm going to show you guys something that'll illustrate the madness that leads to sometimes. I'm gonna show you our patch bay because it's kind of shocking. All right, that is our patch bays.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Versus this.
Now, it's like that right now because we are set up for both tracking and mixing. We've been doing writing sessions with Mark Foster from Foster the People for this girl, Grace Mitchell, whose EP is about to come out in a week or two, I think. And so we've been doing those, and we've been finishing up that Santi Gold record and a couple other mix projects. So we've got that patching is like our full, our mix setup plus our tracking setup all patched in at once and trying not to interfere with each other as much as we can help it. But yeah, that's the kind of craziness you get here at a private studio is like, it's always, everything stays up as much as possible and then is just constantly slowly changing.
You guys do recalls or?
Oh yeah, tons of recalls. I mean, every once in a while you get a song where like he does the first mix and sends it out, and they're like, "We love it, no changes, it's perfect." Usually, even if they love it, there's still a few tweaks, and we'll have to do mix 2, mix 3. Every once in a while, you get an artist that's like super super picky, and you get to like mix 16 on a song. And so what we do basically is, the SSL. I don't know if any of you guys know much about the SSLs, but that has a system called Total Recall built in. So to the degree that we're using the SSL, we can it basically records where you can have it save where stuff is, and you have to manually put it back, but it tells you where to put. It tells you on the screen in the center where to put each knob as you go through the board. Takes a while, but it does the hard part, which is the saving for you. All the outboard gear we do two ways. One, there's a program called T-Boy Audio that basically has pictures, like PDFs of all the outboard gear that you can move the knobs and stuff on. It's all saved, it's its own application on the Mac. And so we basically, as Rich does a mix, we notate what all the patch routing is that we've done in there, and then all the settings on the gear. And then there's a few pieces of gear that aren't in T-Boy that we use, and so for those we just have paper recall sheets, and we just write again just pictures of the gear, and we just mark down in pencil what the settings are, make photocopies at the end of the song, and save them in a nice manila envelope for that song.
You guys print stems of stuff too?
Yeah, we do stems on most of the stuff we mix. Usually we just do, unless like if a client requests something special for like, their live show or whatever, we'll print like more specific stems, but usually it's just like drums, percussion, bass, rhythm guitar, lead guitar, keyboards, if there's horns or strings, something like that. Lead vocals, backing vocals, so it'll just be like 8 or 10 stems per song.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Snare stem, clap stem.
Yeah, well, so like on the Santi Gold record, they basically paid extra to have us do a set of stems that was everything broken out. Every single, so kick 1, kick 2, snare 1, snare 2, snare 3, toms, drum loop, exactly, every individual track. Sort of, and yeah, so that took, doing that can take like 4 hours to do one song, because you just got to run everything down individually. Which actually, when I mix at home, I mix in the box because, well, I don't have a lot of money for gear, and these days, you can get this close in the box. It's 10 times the money for 10% increase in quality or whatever, and you can do totally professional mixes in the box these days. And so what I make sure to do is I set everything up and route it all at the beginning of the session so that I can just press record when I'm done, when the mix is approved, and print all my mix versions and all my stems in one pass. And that way I don't have to spend hours printing. And it's one of the real advantages, I think, to mixing in the box is that you do have that option.
Yeah, that's smart. We Skyped with JP, and so we were looking at his studio. We were just looking at the difference between, you know, your studio and JP's studio. And JP's like got a pair of S10s, a vocal chain, and a Mac, you know, and a Pro Tools rig, but does everything.
Should we do a tour here?
Yeah, let's maybe if you could talk about the process and how it works.
All right. Well, so okay, everything starts. I don't have Pro Tools running right now, but everything starts with the main computer here. This is our main Pro Tools rig. It's got a Mac Pro, one of the coffee maker looking ones.
The tower or the
the new Mac Pros. We got one at the beginning of the year, which is great. I mean, it's been an awesome machine.
And are you guys running Pro Tools 10 or are you on 12?
We're on 11.
11.
And I'm actually thinking about going up to 12 at home. But 11's great. I mean, it took us a long time to make that move, but once we did, everything runs much better. Like it's probably my favorite version of Pro Tools.
And the meter reader and all that stuff in there.
Plus, we had all kinds, like the guy who had mine and Martin's job before us it was very clear that whenever Rich was interested in a plugin or something, he would just find a crack and install it. So like the old machine was just full of cracks, some stuff that Rich never used anymore, and it was just completely bloated and ridiculous, and we had a lot of crashes and everything. So when we got the new machine, it was really nice to do just like a clean install, Pro Tools 11, everything legit, everything running well. And now we only get, it'll still crash every once in a while, but it's not like 5 times a day like it was before. Anyway, everything, obviously starts in Pro Tools, and we route it all. This is our console, the SSL 9000K. It's a 48-channel console, and we don't actually use it much anymore. We use it for tracking a lot, but for mixing, we now have this guy over here. Let's see. We have this SPL Equinox summing box, and it basically is a Neve 8058 summing bus in a box with 32 inputs, and it sounds way better than the SSL. And this is the best sounding SSL I've ever used. I've used a bunch of different ones, and that thing, I mean, it's just really clean and transparent, but still has tons of warmth and character, and just feels really good. And we mixed, as I was saying to Alec earlier, we did the last Rich produced and mixed the last Death Cab for Cutie record here, and when we were mixing, he pretty much mixed the whole record through the console and then mixed the whole record through the summing box, and the summing box one's just won hands down, and that was it. Like every once in a while he'll try to mix through the console again, and he'll just get frustrated and go back to the summing box because it sounds that much better. It's really pretty astounding. Ultimately we just chalk it up to like, you're not going through as much stuff. You're not going through, when you're going through the board, you're going through all the chips for all the routing and all the, compressors and EQs, whether, you're using them or not. Like there's so much stuff in the way of the sound, and the summing box is just, it's pretty much just something doing the summing, and it's not doing anything else. You're not adding a bunch of extra electronics into the chain. So,
wow. Is that a Hughes on top of it?
Yeah, Hughes SRS. He uses that on a send off Pro Tool.
What's he?
So basically, what? Sorry.
Like synths and stuff, or?
Yeah, all kinds of stuff. Anything he wants to make wide, pretty much, goes through there. So yeah, what we do is we send all the tracks out to the summing box, but we also have some stuff going out other outputs, because we have Soundbox has 32 inputs, and we have more. We have what I think 64 outputs on our Pro Tools rig. So we we'll use some of those. We'll do hardware inserts on the Pro Tools session for things like the vocal chain, and then what we'll do is we'll use some of the other outputs to send out to reverbs and things like the SRS box, any outboard effects things, and that's where we do use the board still. We'll have those come up on the board, but then we'll just bus them to one stereo pair of buses that just gets patched into the Equinox. So that way we can get more processing, more inputs than the Equinox has strictly. And so then from the Equinox, we have this thing next to it. What we used to do is we used to patch from the Equinox through our mix chain and then back into the SSL center section. And now we have, this guy here with the red lights on it is the Shadow Hills Palindrome. It's actually a product that doesn't exist except for this one and probably another prototype somewhere. And it's the centerpiece to a future Shadow Hills console, potentially, or possibly like super summing box kind of thing. But basically serves as just a basic center section for the board. And so that has a mix insert on it. So we go into that, and then the next step is these Magic Death Eye compressors that we use, followed by the GML EQ and the Millennia EQ, if you guys can see those. And then sometimes this tube clipper box that is also made by Magic Death Eye, although we haven't been using that too much recently, but it's a pretty cool box. And so all that's just, just simple processing, just compression, EQ. And what gets complicated is that from there, the signal gets sent out. It's actually less complicated than it used to be, but basically we send the signal from there to, he has two really nice stereo converters over there, a Burl B2 Bomber and a JCF Latte. And so he has his choice. The Latte is really transparent. The Bomber is has transformers in it, so it's more, it adds something more to the signal. It's more colored. And then we go into his Weiss DS1, which here, over here. So this rack has our converters going back in, and the Weiss DS1 here, which is really a mastering box. And Rich uses that. Sometimes he doesn't use it on every mix. Sometimes he uses it just to tighten up the low end a little bit. And then from there into our second Pro Tools rig, which is always going at 96K. So regardless of, whether the original session's at 44.1 or 48, we always print back in at 96K. And then it also goes back into the main Pro Tools rig as just a backup reference copy.
So, and then you have the analog clock.
Oh yeah, we have the analog. Everything is clocked off of the everything's clocked off the Antelope master clock, which is the Antelope Trinity here with the atomic clock 10 megahertz oven thing. And then our first 32 outputs and 16 inputs is a Burl mothership. And then after that, we have a Avid HDIO and a 192.
And then are you guys clocking both rigs? That Trinity thing can do, so you clock both rigs off the...
We actually have a third rig. This computer over here used to be what we called our upload rig. Sorry, this guy here, which we actually aren't using anymore. What we used to do was we used to send not just to the print rig and the main Pro Tools rig, but we also sent it to the upload rig. So we'd send it to the main rig at whatever session the session was at. That's one of the outputs of the Trinity. Then we have the print rig at 96K. That was another output of the Trinity. And then we'd have the upload rig at 44.1, and then and that was the third clock output on the Trinity. Now, what we were doing then was, at that point, we were only using the Weiss for the uploads just to make them loud. Because, you know, when you're mixing, you know, a good mix with some headroom is a lot quieter, obviously, than a mastered CD. And so when we send out references to clients, they like to hear it sort of how it would be when it's mastered. So we always have to make the songs louder, make the mixes louder before we send them out, sort of do like a fake mastering job on them. So he used to do that with the Weiss. Now that he's using the Weiss in the mix process, what we actually discovered sounds really good is we print back into 96K on our second rig, and we literally clip gain up the prints. It's like against everything you're ever told to do. Like, we just turn them up till they're as loud as they need to be, which is just going to cut off the waveforms and totally clip them. But it actually sounds good. We just do that and export a 16-bit 44.1 copy and send that to the client. We were all sort of shocked when we were like, all right, let's try this and see if it works. And we were all kind of shocked that it really didn't sound terrible. Like, it actually sounded about as good as just processing through the Weiss and recording it in at the proper sample rate and stuff. So that was a shock to all of us. But yeah, you can literally just clip gain files up in Pro Tools and then, reconsolidate the file, and it doesn't sound terrible. I mean, today's masters are so distorted and so just clipped anyway that it's you kind of have to do that to be competitively loud at all. And I hate using the term competitively loud because of the loudness wars, and it is such a silly thing, but clients still care about it. They still want their shit as loud or louder than everybody else's.
Well, they probably like it. They don't know. They just listen to it and like it. It sounds good.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, it's not even a conscious, like, I want myself louder. It's like, this doesn't sound as good because it's not louder.
So you just clip it up till it's a brick and reconcile.
Yeah. What we have this, what is this? The Brainworks K meter, the Bobcat's loudness metering system.
Mm-hmm.
And we use the 20 dB scale. I don't know the details, but we just know that, like, a mix at its loud point should be around 15 RMS level on that scale. So we just basically turn it up till it gets to there. Okay. And then, of course, the tricky part is once you've sent a mix out to a client, then you recall that mix and do a revision. The next one has to be just as loud or louder, or the client's not going to like it as much, So let's say we're doing a revision and Rich made some drastic mix bus changes, so the level is fairly different of the mix. We have to basically go and look at what we sent them before and how loud we made that at the loudest part and make absolutely sure that this mix is just as loud, when we send it out. Otherwise, the client's going to go, oh, no, I like mix one better, not knowing that they just like it better because it's louder. It's all in all, becomes a very silly process sometimes.
And what do you so you guys still use a lot of outboard gear? Like,
tons. I mean, even though we're using the Equinox summing bus, we're still patching in between on a lot of the outputs. So we'll, keyboards, for example, recently he's been running through a pair of channels on his Neve BCM console and just doing a little bit of EQ on those. Or like we'll run, he'll use the stereo Fairchild, the 670, as a hardware insert for the guitars. And then we'll run, he's got, we've been using this a lot for the vocals. He will run out one of those outputs going out of Pro Tools and back into the Equinox will go into this NTI EQ and then into a Neve 33609 compressor. And that'll just be a parallel. Like we won't send any tracks directly out there. That'll just be, he'll do sends in Pro Tools to that output on vocal tracks. And it's just a basically parallel compression set up for his vocals.
So you use hardware inserts on other channels in Pro Tools and then certain outputs to sum through the summing mixer.
We'll also have gear patched across them, yeah.
We'll also have gear patched across, which then is what prints over to your secondary rig and what you print all your mixes to.
Yeah.
What kind of plugins do you guys? What kind of plugins are you guys using?
I mean, all kinds, but the UAD is the big one. Like, he has an artist relationship or whatever with UAD, so we get all the plugins. We have a lot of UAD hardware. We've got a UAD Octo card in our Thunderbolt chassis. We've got a UAD Octo satellite as well, like Thunderbolt satellite hooked up. So we've got basically 16 DSP cards from UAD hooked up, and which seems to be enough. He can use as much of UAD stuff as he says without running out most of the time these days. But yeah, the UAD plugs are great. I mean, it's annoying having to buy hardware to go with them, but they really do the best models and stuff. We use the Steven Slate stuff a bunch. I more than Rich does. I use the Steven Slate stuff at home all the time. There's some Waves plugins. A lot of the Waves plugins we use are because sessions come in with stuff people already using those. It's frustrating because one of the things we've done in the last couple of years is gotten rid of all the cracks in the studio, and it's really common for people to have a cracked Waves Mercury with just every Waves plugin. So a lot of times we get sessions with Waves plugins that we don't have because Rich has bought a bunch of them but doesn't have the full Mercury bundle. And we have to decide at that point whether it's important enough to the song that he should buy it, or whether it's something. If it's just usually if it's just like a CLA 1176 compressor, he'll just use something else. It's only if it's something really specific that does a certain thing that you can't just it's not just your basic EQ and compression or reverb or whatever, that he'll end up just adding it to his collection.
Are you guys always buying new gear and buying?
Oh, I mean, buying new gear, buying new plugins, selling gear that he no longer likes. I mean, everything's We've and things just go in and out of favor with him too. Not just buying and selling and getting new stuff, but he'll have an EQ that he really loves and we'll use it for 2 albums, and then something won't work out with it. A client won't really like a mix that he does with it, and he'll change to another EQ, and that'll solve the problem. And he won't use that EQ for months, and then he'll discover it again months later and be like, "Why aren't we using this more?" We are constantly changing what gear's in favor and what's not.
And that's cool. And so you guys are mixed. I mean, Rich mixes a lot of stuff, right?
Yeah.
But then you're also producing bands and engineering them. I mean, are you pretty much kind of the engineer? So is he a producer where he's just go ahead, just do this and engineer it for me, or is he more why don't we try?
It's tricky because when Rich is mixing, he's mixing and we're assisting basically. We're doing recall notes, we're doing the printing, we're keeping track of everything. And sometimes he'll have us do revisions on mixing too. Once he's done a mix, if a client has notes, and he might have us come in on a weekend when he's not here or something and address their notes if he thinks it's if it's not too much of a judgment call thing, and it's they just want vocals up a little in one part and less bright guitar in another part and whatever. He'll have us do that kind of stuff. And then but then as far as when he's producing, he really does want to just wear the producer's hat and let us be the engineers. Of course, because he is a mixer and he does know a lot about engineering, it's never quite that way. I mean, we'll do our thing and then he'll be like, "No, let's try this. Let's use this piece of gear. Oh, I want to go get that guitar pedal and insert that here, in the chain." Or, so he does make a lot of choices about what gear we use and stuff like that, but we're the ones, plugging everything up, dialing everything in, really getting all the sounds and stuff. And he's just, verbally advising at that point with what he wants. And it's cool. So we don't really produce anything here that we don't mix here, but we do a lot of mixing on stuff that we didn't produce.
Are you kind of mixing as you go, or does he pretty much produce it and then start over? Or
Yeah, he pretty much produces it and starts over. Every once in a while, he'll get like a really good rough mix in the middle of production that when he's mixing, he's like trying to match or beat and can't quite get there, and we'll end up like recalling the rough mix and starting from there. But most of the time, it's time to mix. It's like faders down, start over, and try to do it better. Sometimes he'll be in the middle of a mix and we'll think he's almost done, and he's not happy with it, and he'll just like turn down all the faders and start over again. I mean,
yeah, that's what I've heard is that he'll pretty much get it to where he wants, and then he'll just maybe pull everything down or
yeah. So one of the things he does a lot is he'll be working on the mix, and he'll get he'll sort of gotten everything, all the individual sounds good, but he'll gotten all the individual sounds where he likes them, but the whole mix isn't gelling right, isn't together right. The balances aren't where he wants them. So he'll keep all the plugins and stuff that he's got dialed in and the gear, but he'll just take down all his faders. And when we're mixing with the summing box, that means in Pro Tools he's got everything's routed to aux tracks that then go out to the Equinox. So he'll just turn down all those aux tracks and just start bringing them back in one by one and getting his balances where he redoing his balances from scratch rather.
That's a lot different than Neil, right? Like,
oh, Neil was Rich and Neil could not be more different in terms of Rich is constantly changing what gear he uses. Like I said, Neil would stay with we'd make one or two changes per album in what gear he's using. Like with Neil, when I was prepping sessions, everything always came up on the same channels on the board. Everything, we didn't even have to use console tape to identify what was on what channels because everything was always at the same place. So we just knew where it was. With Rich, everything's constantly changing. He's constantly changing his setup. Neil would just he'd start with the drums, he'd get those going, then he'd bring in the bass, and he'd just build up the mix piece by piece, and then he'd get into automation, he'd do his rides, and then he'd be done. And that was he's had a system. I could tell, I knew okay, he gets into automation, he's probably an hour away from finishing his mix. I'm going to start taking recall notes. And with Rich, I've seen him do great, amazing mixes in 2 hours. I've seen him take 3 days to do a great, amazing. That was the other. Neil was one mix a day, solidly. And Rich is it can be 2 hours, it can be 3 days. You could never tell. And he'll start over. We'll go through every possible bus compressor in the room on a mix and then end up back where we started. It's just a constant process of trying new things and new ideas.
That's crazy to me because I've never heard of somebody changing out their mix bus compressors.
Oh yeah, we have. So I mean, it's been kind of amazing lately because we've had these Magic Death Eye compressors that we got that he actually has been sticking with, but before that he's got the Shadow Hills mastering compressor. We've got the Fairchilds. We've got a Tube Tech LCA 2B that he likes sometimes. What else do we have? Trying to think. Oh, we've got the Neve 33609. He's got these EAR Fairchild style compressors.
Oh yeah, the Esoteric Audio Work, those black ones, like the Fairchild knockoffs.
Got a pair of those that are just off now because they're just don't hold up against the Magic Death Eyes, even though they're $12,000 a piece or something.
Wow. And how booked out are you guys?
We're pretty busy. I mean, we have this week off because things have been a little slow, which basically means there was time for Rich to take a week off. But even with this week off, I had to come in yesterday and do a bunch of stem printing to finish up the Santi Gold record. And even right before I started this with you guys today, I was finishing up we did a radio mix of one of the songs from the Muse record. And I was printing versions for that. So even when we have time off, there's usually a little bit of cleanup work. But oftentimes we go all week, Monday through Friday. And then, I would say about a half to a third of weekends, we have either me or Martin has to come in for at least one day on the weekend to do either more cleanup work or do mix tweaks like I was saying before on mixes he did earlier in the week or something like that. So we stay pretty fully booked. He's got a good management. I mean, that's to the credit of both Rich and his, what he's done, and also he's got a good management team. His manager is really effective and keeps us pretty busy.
And does he? I mean, what as far as getting work, it's probably like 50% management, 50% Rich, or all Rich, or just word of mouth, or just people wanting to work with him.
I think a lot of it is people wanting to work with him, and then some of it is his manager actively, selling him to people on projects that he'd be particularly interested in working on.
Like somebody calls up the management and they're like, "We wanted to sound like Death Cab for Cutie." They're like, "You probably should work with Rich."
Yeah, exactly. And obviously his manager's not just, his manager has like 14 clients or something. So the manager's not just pushing him, but they've done, we are too busy more than we are not busy enough. Definitely.
It's a good problem to have.
Definitely a good problem to have.
And are you guys, one thing that I've noticed, at least looking at his discography, and, it seems like he has a lot of repeat clients, like return customers. And so is he, when you guys go through, I know a lot of mixers like Chris Lord-Alge or Paul Hager, that's like, this is a Paul Hager mix.
Right.
Or this is a Chris Lord-Alge mix. And he almost signed a contract. And so even though they're both very great at what they do and they get a lot of repeat clients, but you guys kind of go above and beyond to make sure people are happy, or?
Yeah, definitely. Always the client, what the client wants wins. Rich will sometimes take a mix that a client likes and he's not happy with and redo it. But if the client decides to go with the original mix, we go with that. Rich does have a sound, I would say, but I don't think he has a sound as much as a lot of other, especially like a Chris Lord-Alge. Like Chris Lord-Alge has a really definite sound. Like you can really pick it out on the radio. But because Rich changes up his gear and stuff, Rich changes his tastes day to day. He'll do a mix one day and be really happy with it. And the next week when we're recalling it, he'll be like, "How did you guys let me send out this mix? This is terrible. What do you do?" Like he's constantly changing his own mind about what he wants out of a mix. So I think to that degree, I don't think he has as much of a defined sound as, a lot of other big mixers. But yeah, client is always number one. If they're happy, they're, for the most part, it's good enough. And even if they're not, on a lot of records, the client wants something different, and than what Rich wants. And he's annoyed that he doesn't get, he doesn't get to just make it the way he wants it, but it's their record,
How did you get hooked up with Rich?
He actually, when his last engineer was burnt out and done, he called, I guess, a bunch of the major studios in Hollywood looking for good people to replace him. And so that was why Martin started about 2 weeks before I did. He came from Henson. Okay. And then he had called up Mike and Adam at Paramount. And, since I'd been working with Neil successfully for for 6 years or something at that point, they thought I would be a good fit. And so, I came in, interviewed, started like the next week. It was all very sort of sudden. I had to I felt bad because there were a couple clients that I'd been recording, like a couple days a week for, a few months at that point, and at Paramount regularly. And I kind of had to be like, I'm handing you out here somebody I've picked out to hand you off to. I think they'll do a good job. I'm really sorry, but I'm getting this full-time gig. And it was really, it's mellowed out some. Like now it's usually more like 50 to 60 hours a week. But especially in the first year I was here, we were absolutely slammed. And we were also using SSLG at that point. We were printing a lot more stems. Like we were printing a lot more individual stems for every mix we did. And we were just really busy. And I did a lot of like 80 and 90-hour weeks in the first year I was here.
But you're still consistently working 7 days a week.
Still consistently working 7 days. Well, no, 5 or 6 days a week. But yeah.
And how has it been? I've been out of LA for 5 years.
Yeah.
How is it there with the major label? Like, how have you noticed budgets? How is it? I mean, I'm just curious for my own. But
I mean,
how's it
it's a
now?
little hard to tell because I'm here and I'm not at Paramount, so like I don't have the same perspective I did then, overall. I think we definitely have a little bit of the higher end, more willing to spend money clientele here. I mean, Rich is not cheap. I know that. I don't know how much he charges or anything, but it's definitely a situation where you're paying for him and then you're paying for the cost of the studio as well, which that ends up covering his costs for the studio and his costs paying us and stuff like that. But labels seem like they're willing to spend money if they think it's going to pay off. It's
Death Cab's doing their record and it's on Atlantic and it's the next big release. And
Death Cab's doing their record, and they were just here basically for 4 months or 5 months total doing it.
5 months. That's crazy.
So like that's a lot of studio time. Like it had to be an expensive record to make, and I'm super happy with the way it came out. But I was honestly surprised at the time that they were able to get that kind of money out of Atlantic. But for a alternative rock record that has somewhat of a ceiling on how well it's gonna do. But then we've been doing some more like poppier stuff like that girl Grace Mitchell I mentioned earlier, and for that kind of stuff where there is obviously it could completely flop and not do anything, but if the label is behind it and thinks it's going to do something, it doesn't seem like there's much of a limit on what they're willing to put out. We spent a couple weeks just recently on that, just writing, just basically it was basically Mark Foster from Foster the People and Isom, one of his band members, and Rich just writing. We got like 3 songs instrumentally written in a week and a half, and that was all, I'm sure, at full studio budget and everything like that. So I mean, pop records especially, they seem willing to still put money behind. I know for a lot of bands it tends to be more like, here's your budget, figure it out. Like
what it costs if you want to come here.
Yeah, for a lot of bands, not stuff that we're doing, but like I know just from talking to other people and stuff that a lot of it's like label will be like, you have 20 grand or 30 grand to make your record, and that's everything included, producer's fee, everything.
Does Rich take points? Does he take?
Yeah, I know he does take points. I don't know how what he normally gets, but he gets points for mixing and points for producing.
Do you guys ever replay parts, come up with others? Like if you get the track and he's like, oh, this would really be great if it had this synth part, or this mandolin could be doubled or something. Do you guys do stuff like that? Does he play, or do you guys play a lot?
Oh, well, if we're producing and stuff, obviously we're gonna do tons of that. If it's just a straight mixing situation, the only time that'll really come into play is if Rich is big on old synths and stuff, and he's got a Modcan modular synth. He's got his ARP 2600. He's really into synths. So a lot of times, especially if we'll have like a synth bass part or something in the song that he feels like is kind of weak, and he could be a lot more interesting. If we have the MIDI for the part, he's not going to sit there and figure out the whole part. But if we have the MIDI for the part, we'll run that MIDI back out through another synth and get a better sound going, rather than spend a lot of time mixing the sound that they already had. We do a lot of that. And the other thing we'll do occasionally is reamping stuff. From reamping, a guitar through a different amp or something while mixing to get a better sound. Or even like we'll do, we did something on a record recently where, we put in one of our ISO booths, we set up a Bryson amplifier and an Oratone speaker on a pair. You set the Oratone on you sort of tape it to a pair of drumsticks and set it on the rim of the snare drum, and then mic up the bottom. So this was a record where they had mic'd the top snare, but they hadn't mic'd the bottom snare, and he wanted more of a bottom snare sound. So you run that snare signal out through the, into the Oratone that's, firing face down on a snare drum. and it triggers the snare drum to react, and then you mic up the bottom, and you basically create a bottom snare sound out of that.
That's cool.
So we'll do stuff like that where it's, you know, more reamping or just rerunning a part that more than actually like replaying anything.
What about like session prep? Do you guys tune a lot of vocals, gain stuff, scooch it around? No.
No, we expect all that stuff to be done when the session comes in, and obviously if they ask us to do a little bit, it'll, you know, a little bit it can happen. But as far as prep, we basically, Rich's whole thing is when he's mixing, it's match the rough mix first and then make it better. So when a session comes in, like he'll have Mario, who's doing the prep, keep a lot of their, if it comes in with plugins, if it comes in with automation and stuff, he'll have him keep a lot of that stuff in the session because usually that session is what they made their rough mix from. So it makes it easier to get it to the point where you basically like matched their rough mix and levels and everything. And then the goal from there is to just try to make it sound bigger and wider and, you know, a little more interesting and stuff like that. But you don't, you know, a big rule is like you don't, if assuming that they have a rough mix that they actually like, is you don't want to stray too far from it because people get attached to their rough mix. And if you do stray too far, you end up just doing more recalls to try to, you know, just make it more like the rough. And
do you guys, does he pretty much just dictate what he chooses to do? Like if you get somebody like a vanity project that has a big budget that comes in, is there many of that kind of stuff where it's like?
Not a lot. He does some stuff where he does, most of the stuff we do is stuff he actually wants to work on. Either it's something he knows about already and like is definitely interested in, or an A&R person that he's worked with a lot, like thinks it's something that he would be good for, you know, or somebody he trusts, like wants him to work on it. We did do, what did we do a few months back? We did a Carly Rae Jepsen song that was like, that's not Rich's wheelhouse at all. But he was like, you know, she had a huge, massive hit. If this one's, you know, anywhere close, it's a huge money earner. It's one day. Let's just knock this Carly Rae Jepsen song out. You know, it was just one of those like, do this and hope it pays off kind of things. Even not really cool, you know.
That's cool.
But most of the stuff we're doing because, you know, he wants to work on it.
But he's passionate about his art, and I mean, it's like
definitely
versus the paycheck.
Yeah. Oh no. I mean, like I said, he's working 12 to 14-hour days most days. He's, you know, we never do things the easy way. That's like almost a rule. Like it's not actually a rule of his, but it seems like it is. Like if they're like, you know, when you could just like grab a soft synth and make something happen, you know, fairly quickly. It's like, no, instead let's, you know, get the Wurlitzer out, run it through several pedals, patch it into, you know, some nice mic pre's, compress it, throw it, you know, bust it through the console, over to the console, send out to the H3000 and record all of it on like 4 tracks rather than like, you know, pull up Native Instruments Machine and dial in a patch. You know, like it's.
But that's why we do this, right? It's like that's
the
art.
Of course. Yeah,
that's cool. And you have you and Martin are the 2 engineers. You have a runner assistant guy.
Yeah, Mario, and he also does the session prep.
And interns potentially.
And then we have Bernardo, who's our intern that's been here about a month. And you know, he's just sort of getting the hang of things, and I think he also does he does dubbing work for a company that like does you know, translates TV shows into different languages and stuff like that. So he has a job doing that. So he'll come in from like 9 to 2:30 every day, because then at 3 he has to go do his dubbing job.
Wow. Well, that's cool. It sounds. So, do you have any guys that maybe like what you're looking for? I mean, like if you were going to get an intern or someone of these guys wanted to come down there and work, like what are, you know, because you've seen a lot, like, and you've also seen a lot you've seen what really works and people like success stories, but like any advice for these guys? Or, I mean, is college like, I mean, I'm telling these kids they should go to college and get an education, but I mean,
Yeah. No, I mean, one thing that I was really happy about with my own education was that I didn't go to like recording school. I went to, 4-year liberal arts college or whatever, UC Santa Cruz, and I did a minor in electronic music. But I learned all my fundamentals really well. I learned signal flow. I learned how analog audio worked. I learned how digital audio worked. Like, I got a really good, firm academic understanding of all that stuff. So that when I came to LA, it was just, I didn't even know Pro Tools, when I got out of school. We used like Cubase 4 or something at some point. We used Sound Designer 2, which is an ancient version of like 2-track version of Pro Tools. And we used a bunch of esoteric programs, but I knew how audio worked when I got out of school. And so when I moved to LA, I was able to, buy myself a home Pro Tools setup, learn that on my own, just apply the lessons that, what I knew to that, learn how the SSL routing worked. But if you have your fundamentals down, all that stuff makes sense. And it's just learning the specifics of how that particular machine or program works. And I really felt like that was an advantage. And there were other kids that started running at Paramount at the same time as me who had just, done a year or two of recording school, and they like knew the specific consoles that they had worked on, but they didn't understand like the fundamentals of how the signal moved around the studio, how you got, or how like digital audio actually works or anything like that. And they didn't do as well. Like they didn't, a lot of them ended up quitting partway through being runners, being frustrated with not having moved up to assistant, or just took a lot longer to get everything solid enough that they could move up to assistant or whatever. The second thing is
there wasn't many runners that made it to, I mean, at least at my time there, there wasn't many runners that made it to assistant. Like
it's definitely like less than half.
And people that are, and I think it says this test that people that are actually out there now in the industry doing it that were runners, there's only a handful of people that climbed up that, make it to where you're at right now.
Totally.
And that's one of the things I think is just as interesting is it's like both of you and JP have college educations. You speak well on written form. You're polite. You are educated. You read. You try to better yourself outside of there, and you're fun to hang out with. You guys are good guys. I think that's important too. Is just your attitude.
The attitude is huge. Because look, with studio life, you're going to spend 12 hours in a room with somebody at a time, often for weeks on end. Like, it's important that you be able to get along with them and hang out with them. And, like, attitude says a lot. Being just people liking having you around will get you gigs just as much as being good at your job, ultimately, It's hard. I would not recommend going into engineering if it's not what you really want to do. When I started here, the guy who had Mario's job, Mario started a little while after us as an intern. The guy who had Mario's job doing the prep work and being the general studio assistant and stuff had moved to LA wanting to be a songwriter basically, and had taken this job because he had a connection through his brother was a friend of Rich's. And he had been here for like a year, but he left because he was like, I'm not doing what I want to do, and I'm spending all my time at the studio doing what I don't really want to do. And it's because it will eat up your life and take up all your time. So it's something I would really only recommend to people who really want to do it, because it's tough, and it takes a long time for it to pay even decently, and only a few people out of everybody get to the point where it pays a lot,
Well, it's hard to stay there too,
Totally.
Once you get up on top, it's hard to be there for, the top lining takes a long time to it takes a lot of energy to stay on top.
Oh, definitely.
And Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Nick. I really appreciate.
Yeah.
The whole thing. I mean, I wish we could keep going through.
No, but I hope I was helpful. I hope you guys found it somewhat interesting.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I'll call you a bit later and we can work out all the details in the back end.
Cool. All right. Sounds good.
All right.
All
See
right.
you.
Thank you.